here as a section. We launched this about 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago now, under Jimmy Robichaux's leadership. We didn't really know what we were getting into, what middle mile was. AMXL in general was generally very new. So now moving into middle mile, it was even newer. We didn't really know what it was gonna be. We started with only those 2 routes the very first couple of days, and then we grew it to right about 10 routes. We were using rental trucks, now we have branded trucks, so things have changed quite a bit. For a while we were at the old offsite lot, now we're at the new lot. We're looking to build that up, and we still have a lot of runway when it comes to the rest of our route. So that's kind of how we got here. So what you're seeing right here, this is my view of Amazon Relay. Okay, so this shows what our performance metrics are across the board in the main categories. You've got our on time, which is essentially on time to origin when you guys show up and grab your gear, and then also your on time to your individual locations. Okay, you can see we're at a 98.5% there. Acceptance means how many of the loads that are actually tendered to us that are actually picked up. And you can see our score right there at 95.2. Of note, our 95.2 grade up here is our overall grade, all right, as a company. And I want you guys to just take quick note of the fact that both of these scores match right now. And I'm gonna talk to why that is in a second, okay? Our app usage is at 100%. This should never be less than 100% because we should always be using Amazon Relay for everything. Now, this is usually an issue with independent carriers because independent carriers have other software that they use and Relay is just a part of what they do. For us as a DSP, it's all encompassing under one app, okay? Which is why this should never be lower than 100%. I personally never see it lower than 100%. If anybody else does, we've got a serious problem, okay? And then this last piece here is disruption free. This is also having, again, a lot to do with our actual performance on road, okay? So those are the overall priorities that Amazon tracks holistically. I want to talk through a little bit of some of the priorities that we as a company need to be focused on, and specifically with middle mile going forward, all right? And these are going to be the same priorities that Josh receives and has received since he's come into the position. And then James, you and Charlie need to be reinforcing this on the road. And then Jim, if you ever have any questions, throughout your time, make sure you're asking about how you can improve this performance, okay? So as far as some of our priorities go, I'm gonna first talk to on time. So, Josh, this is where you and the dispatchers are really gonna have to get into a good rhythm when it comes to ensuring that we are following up on every one of our misses, whether it was Amazon controlled or we controlled it, okay? So when we are not on time for any reason, there has to be information put forth as to why, okay? And that's where the delays and the disputes come in, okay? So we're gonna make sure that you, Charlie, and yourself all understand how to make sure that we're putting in reason codes for all of those delays and then disputing any issues on road, okay? So if you guys are unsure about that in any way, we need to be constantly working over the next couple of weeks to make sure that we understand those processes, okay? Now, Jim, for you, for all the rest of the middle mile employees, where you guys come into this is great communication to the dispatchers and to Josh as to what delays that you're actually seeing on road, okay? Anything outside the baseline, okay? In last mile, for example, anytime that our drivers hit traffic or they are caught up in an assembly or they have any issues on road, we need to make sure that that information gets back to our dispatcher so it can be logged, and then when asked questions about it by Amazon, we can make sure that we have that information. In middle mile, it's a little bit different because we don't have that constant open line of communication. We have the chime rooms, but it's a little bit different because you're not co-located with Amazon, okay? For you guys, for dispatchers, and for your manager, when it comes to your drivers, we need to make sure that we're pulling real-time information so that the dispatchers can write it down and we can get that performance input so that every single time we are delayed for any reason, we make sure that it's understood that it was either an Amazon issue or our own internal issues. Obviously, if it's an Amazon issue, we're gonna make sure that's reported. If it's an internal issue, it's something for us to work on and try to correct, all right? We cannot afford to have drivers that are constantly delayed or constantly late. We understand that things happen from time to time, but being on time, as you can see, is a major part of the game. Okay, questions about that? Okay. The next piece I want to talk about, again, are 2 more major performance metrics that we're going to be tracking internally before we get back to the overall performance here. Okay, first piece is obviously safety. Okay, so any unsafe acts within the section are going to be heavily scrutinized, okay? One of the ways that you have started to be tracked in your safety is through the use of these Netrodyne cameras that are on all the trucks now, Okay, so I want to address the Netrodyne piece and how it relates to safety real quick. The reason that the Netrodyne cameras are in there, it's pretty obvious, right? It's to make sure that we're doing the right thing on road, just like we do in last mile, okay? You have our word. We are not constantly monitoring. For example, I cannot go in and just click on Jim's truck and watch you drive. That's just not how it works, okay? That's, in some ways, I would say kind of an invasion of privacy, right? What the Netrodyne cameras do is they look out for specific alerts. They're constantly recording so that if an alert takes place, we are notified and then we can then request the footage to view that alert, okay? Right now, Netrodyne, to be honest, and we want to make sure that we're transparent, Netrodyne is more informational than anything else. It is just providing us information that we can then share with you and make sure we utilize it in order to fix issues on road. However, it is very important that we get into a rhythm of monitoring Netrodyne and then speaking with the employees, keeping ourselves accountable, because eventually, most likely later this year, Middle Mile is going to be receiving a scorecard just like last mile. And most of the safety metrics will come directly from the Netrodyne footage, okay? So in preparation for this ultimate scorecard, which is going to dictate the performance of the section long term, we need to make sure that we're adhering to the footage that we get back from Netrodyne, okay? So Netrodyne is here to stay, and if anything, it is going to become more intrusive. It's just part of the game that we play. As part of our contract with Amazon, we have no say in that, okay? Questions? All right. Going to be, looking at as a priority of performance comes to our drop scans, okay? So I just want to hit on that real quick. Now, we receive a daily update as to our performance when it comes to drop scans. What drop scans means is how many packages are we not scanning at the destination. Okay, so when you guys offload your pallets, if you fail to scan that individual pallet or that package, it counts against you as dropping the scan, not having the scan. Okay, we need to be above 95% in drop scans at all times, or else we are flagged as being out of compliant with Amazon's standards. Okay, right now we've been floating around 98 to 99%. However, as of late, we've seen a slight uptick in drop scans. Okay, so it's very important for all of our middle mile drivers, when you reach the destination, take your time and ensure that you are scanning every package on site. If you have an issue with the app, if you have an issue with the post office, if the post office is not open, if for some reason your app is not working, please communicate that to the dispatchers, get that information back to Josh or Mike P so that we can get it to our performance manager. But drop scans is a daily metric that is counted against us, so we have to stay on top of that. It's something that we should be doing every day and getting it done because it's what I would call an easy win, okay? Dealing with traffic, dealing with delays, dealing with post offices, those are some things that are hard to win. Okay, but when it comes to a drop scan, just taking your time before you move on to your next stop, it's going to make us a lot of money, figuratively, in making sure that our performance score in that regard is good. Okay, questions about drop scans? Okay, so as of right now, gentlemen, those are our main internal priorities. Now, going back to performance, the main one that I want to talk about here, which is going to ultimately dictate the rest of this conversation, is our acceptance. Okay, so going back to when Middle Mile started, okay. When Middle Mile started, it was our goal to get everybody full-time hours, just like we do in Last Mile. As Last Mile is and always will be the foundation of our business, we have to ensure that Last Mile and Middle Mile are synced in how they do things. In Last Mile, just like in Middle Mile when we started, we are starting everybody with 4 full days of work. And our goal within those 4 full days was to get everybody as close to 40 hours as possible. Now, in Middle Mile, and Jim, I know you haven't been around in Middle Mile as long. James, you and Josh still were not there at the very beginning, which is why I want to hit on this and make sure that all of our current Middle Mile drivers understand where we came from and how we got here with regards to hours. That way you guys can better understand where we are going, okay? Josh, like we talked about the other day, Middle Mile started with 4 days a week. Okay, 4 days, as close to about 10 hours as possible, because at that time, the routes were much longer. Okay, so we were able to get most people full-time and then some in just 4 days. Okay, unfortunately, about a year ago, if you guys remember, the routes became a little bit shorter. Okay, and in 4 days, you might only get 32 hours if you were rounded up to that 8 hour that we do for the entire company. That is not sustainable based on the fact that we as a company, while we can't ever promise It is always our goal to get you as close to full-time as possible, because that full-time work is what you can then base your home life and your budget, so on and so forth. That's what we advertise. We can't promise 40 hours, and it's especially difficult in this industry to ever promise 40 hours, but our goal is to always get you as close to that as possible so you know exactly what kind of money you're dealing with, okay? So because the routes became shorter, we went to 5 days. Okay, and in general, we're seeing a lot of people finish most of those routes before 8 hours is even up. That kind of what you guys are seeing? Mm-hmm. Now, I understand that sometimes the routes go over 8 hours, but generally speaking, we're looking around a 6 to 7 and 7.5 hour time length, okay? Which is why we went up to the 5 days, all right? Then we had some changes in leadership. We started moving things around. We brought Mike P in, we reorganized a little bit, and we started to move forward in this new normal over the last few months, okay? The problem is what we are seeing is an increase in rejected loads, all right? 5 days a week for everyone with no backup is resulting in a large amount of dropped routes. Too many, okay? This score right here, the accepted work, which matches our B+ of overall score, at one point was never lower than 99%. We were one of the highest performing carriers in the region, okay? Unfortunately, our score has dropped dramatically, okay? And that is due to attendance and dropped routes. Now, we do not put this solely on any one individual. We don't put this even on the section as a whole, all right? This is just what happened as a result of the routes. And it makes sense in that if you've been working 5 full days and you get put on for a 6th, or you're asked to come in and cover, or maybe you've had 4 days already and something comes up, attendance naturally takes a slight blow, okay? And we understand that. That's just what the times that we've lived in. We've gone to 5 days. There is the issue of burnout at constant 5 days. There is the issue of not having backups for those routes at 5 days. And then there's also the issue that, let's say James gets sick on a Monday and he can't come into work for 5 days. Now we go in and we attempt to fill those routes. If everyone's already at 5 days, there's not going to be near of an incentive to get people to take on a 6th day just to cover those routes, no matter how much overtime it is. Now you're dealing with consecutive burnout, very difficult to find a day off. Guys, this makes sense with how we're operating. So while we want to improve it, looking at where we came from and why we're in this position, it makes sense. But because of what's going on, we have to make some changes. And that's what we're gonna talk about here in just a minute. So the future here is that, again, we've been running about 15 to 16 routes every night. Amazon has authorized us to go up to 25 routes a night, okay? So we have a huge amount of runway, which also means routes will remain very consistent, okay? So the good news for all of our night drivers is that there is work for you, okay? There is constant, consistent work for you. And the way we're looking to do things, this is about to become as close to a salary job in an hourly trucking environment that you could ask for, okay? And we're gonna get to that in just a second. As we look at the future and trying to get towards those 25 routes, it is all based on this performance right here. And it is our goal to grow the section well, to have a strong foundation of drivers so that we get to a solid 25 routes a night. And guys, just the way that we've been operating, if we look at the history of Amazon and how this DSP program operates and continues to grow, if we get to 25 and we change this score back to 99, there will be more routes. It's just how it goes, okay? Amazon is slowly trying to take more volume away from independent carriers and give it to DSPs like us. So if we perform, there will be more and more routes coming our way. But in order to get there, we have to ensure that we are meeting this acceptance at all times, okay? The problem right now for acceptance, guys, and I want everybody to be very clear on this. This is another reason we've had to make some changes, okay, and why we're going to be making some changes to how we schedule people, all right, is because when we reject a load, all right, if we reject a trip and it is outside of 6 hours before the route takes place, we get 1 hit to this acceptance score. 1 hit. If we drop the route within 6 hours, and unfortunately, right before the route takes place, which is more common when somebody calls out of work, it hits us 16 times. 16 times. 16 times. Okay? So that is why the score has dropped significantly, and now that is why this score matches our overall score, because this is the lowest of the scores. Okay? It's important to bring up, guys, the why. Everybody wants more money. Everybody wants a raise at all times. You could be making $28 tomorrow, you'd want 30, right? It's just how it works. Everybody here wants to make more and improve their lives. Okay? We cannot do that unless our scores raise up and we continue to improve and get back to being that #1 company in the region when it comes to middle mile. Okay? So, talked about a lot. Our goal is to get up to that top number. It's what the goal should be. We want to perform. We are not, as owners or as managers, we don't want to be #2, and we also don't want to be complacent, all right? Which is why we're having this meeting and talking about where we were, and now we're going to talk about where we're going. Next up, guys, again, especially for everybody watching, I'm going to make sure I'm as clear about this as possible. If there are any questions from this group, we'll definitely take them when we're done. And if you at home have any questions about this as well, please get those to Josh immediately or to your 2 dispatchers, and then myself and Mike, as well as Mike Pilots, will be able to get those answered as soon as possible. All right? So, again, currently, the standard work in this company in middle mile, not talking about direct delivery, but just our night trips, is 5 minimum 8-hour days, right? 5 minimum 8-hour days. That's generally what everybody is getting, okay? There is some variance here or there with special cases or things that we've had to take into account, but the general and fair way that we've been doing things is 5 8-hour days. Again, some of the cons there: burnout, no backups, and inability, due to lack of time, the ability to pick up extra shifts. If you're already at 5 8-hour days, again, getting that 6th, and obviously we can't even work that 7th day, it leads to burnout. And why would you, when you're already at full time, where's the incentive there? Okay, so the first change that we're going to be making, okay, rather than scheduling everybody for 5 8-hour days, we are going to be pulling everybody back to 4 days. However, just for middle mile, we are going to be increasing the minimum amount of hours paid for every driver to 9 hours. Okay, so in 4 days, you are going to be guaranteed, as long as you show up on time and conduct your route effectively, you will be guaranteed 4 9-hour days, which brings you a total of 36 hours in 4 days. Okay, now that's pretty close to full time, and that's as close as we can get. Okay, right now when it comes to those 9-hour days. What we're also going to be doing is instituting a mandatory call-in shift for your 5th day. Okay. As I thought through this more, guys, what this actually turns into, generally speaking, is a work-from-home shift in many respects, okay? It will be mandatory. Every day we will have at least 2 call-in drivers assigned. Those drivers will be called at the beginning of the dispatch shift, roughly 10 to 10:30 p.m. The drivers need to pick up the phone and respond that they are awake, they are on call should they be needed, okay? If the driver picks up, which it's a shift, it's an assigned shift like anything else, they will automatically, regardless of whether or not they are called in, get 4 hours. Okay, let's do a little math. 4 9-hour shifts plus 1 call-in shift at 4 hours that you are not necessarily mandated to come in unless needed will equal 4 0 hours. Okay, so in summary, with that piece right there, if you show up for all 4 of your 9-hour shifts, you're going to get 36 hours. And as long as you respond for your call-in and you are awake, regardless of whether or not you are called in, you are ready to come in, you will receive that 4 hours. So, as long as you are assigned your 4 9-hour shifts and 1 call-in shift, you are guaranteed 40 hours per week. Okay? 40 hours per week is guaranteed. I understand that for some people, this may result in a slight loss of overtime. However, we need to be upfront and we need to state overtime is never, has never, and will never be promised and or guaranteed. Okay? It is always our goal to get you as close to 40 hours as possible. Okay, now let's talk about for that call-in shift, if you get called in. You are guaranteed 9 hours for that shift. So let's do some more math. 36 plus 9, 45 hours guaranteed if you are called in for that shift, okay? For those of you that are not called in, and for those of you that don't get a call-in shift that week, you are always available to let Josh or the dispatchers or Mike Pete know if you have additional availability besides the 4 days that you were assigned. Okay? In Last Mile, we have gotten into a great rhythm of creating what we call a call-in list. Okay? Mike P reaches out to all of our employees every Friday and he says, hey, the schedule has been posted and we have a call-in list that we're putting together. If you have additional availability on the days that you are not assigned, you may put your name down as somebody available for either a call-in or to be placed on that route if for some reason somebody is no longer able to work. Because let's think about this. After the schedule is published and everybody is at their 4 days or 4 days in a call-in, things can happen. We had somebody get COVID last week and all of their routes were immediately empty. It was almost impossible to get those routes filled because everybody was already operating at 5 days a week. Now with everybody operating at 4 and a call-in, that will give us more depth and more flexibility with which to fill those routes, because again guys, the most important thing is that we raise up our acceptance score and we don't drop any routes. I understand this is a little bit of a change. Our goal again is to always get you guys 40 hours of work so that you can depend on that, you can use that to budget, and you can feel more safe and comfortable in your lives, okay? But as we are trying to make sure that the section is always populated with proper trucks, has employees, and a good system, we need to ensure that people are coming to work when they say they're going to come to work. If it's not, we cannot move forward without reliability, okay? The most important of our 3 principles in Last Mile is teamwork. Obviously trust being number 1 on both sides, but as a team, we work in Last Mile, everybody works together all the time, okay? In Middle Mile, which is why it's on a lot of your new vests, it says reliable excellence on the back, okay? Reliable excellence is the most important thing when it comes to Middle Mile. You have to be reliable and you have to perform on your routes. We cannot have issues at the post offices, we can't have issues at the sorting centers, and we can't have issues with safety on road. As long as we're doing all of those things, we have plans to build this into the best section that there is. Okay, we have a new office being delivered to the offsite this week. We're gonna have coffee, food regularly. We're gonna make sure that there's plenty of cleaning supplies, plenty of gear for you guys. We are investing a ton of money into this section in order to ensure that it's the best section that there is and that it can really rise up to the same level of performance that we have in Last Mile, where we're hitting the Fantastic or Fantastic Plus rating every single week. All right, so those are the main pieces. There's really only that main change in that we're going to go down to 5 days, but we are still going to have the availability to get plenty of hours, okay? Questions from any of you guys?
Will I ever have to drive a 6th day?
I won't say that you will be scheduled for a 6th day. However, if the opportunity arises, we will reach out to you and you may have the ability to drive a 6th day. Our goal is at all costs, when we first publish the schedule, ensure that everything is even and fair across the board. However, as soon as that schedule is published, now the priority switches to ensuring that all the routes go out the door. So, if you already served your 4 days and you didn't even get called in for your call-in, or maybe you did, again, being available and saying that you have the availability for that 6th day is what may actually allow it to happen. Okay, that happens all the time in Last Mile. We schedule everyone at the fair, same days across the board. However, when we need to fill shifts, it's the first person that answers. So you might find yourself with 5 or 6 full days as long as you are available, on time, and ready to go.
No, I mean, obviously, there are a number of people in Middle Mile who this will be a significant change to. We're aware of that. Maybe you're used to working 5 or 6 days and getting overtime every week. The goal of this is not to cut hours, it's to make things more consistent and more reliable, all right? For reference, next week we are lowering our route count in Middle Mile. Right now we're at 16, and next week we're gonna go to 12. So that gives us the buffer space in our schedule to make sure that we're making all of our routes, right? So that being said, there may be people, unfortunately, in Middle Mile where this doesn't work for them and they're not gonna get what they need. And we understand everybody's gotta do what's right by them and what's right for them at the end of the day. That may create openings in the schedule, at which point we'll look to fill those openings with people who can fill them. So hopefully everybody sees how this is like a more beneficial way of doing things. We're much less redlining the section, right? We've pretty much just had our foot all the way down on the gas this whole time. Now it's time to take the foot off the gas a little bit, get things systemized so that we can grow appropriately and have safe, reliable, consistent employment for everyone. So that's what we're looking to do, and open the floor to you guys as far as any questions, comments, concerns, feedback, anything at all. What you guys got for us?
Guys, if there's nothing, I do want to hit that this is going into effect this coming weekend. Okay, so when the schedule comes out this Friday, it will reflect these changes. Okay, couple of reminders. Again, stay in close contact with the two dispatchers, James and Charlie. Make sure that you're staying in contact with Josh. Make sure that you have everyone's phone number. If you have any questions, issues with this, or ideas and or recommendations, we want to hear them. Okay, so again, we've spent the last 3.5 years getting Last Mile to where it is, okay, and they are performing in the best and most outstanding fashion that they have been. We're very happy with that. Now, again, we're trying to bring Middle Mile up to the same. On the whole, guys, I'm gonna close with this. The section is performing very well, okay? The section is performing very, very well, okay? The only real thing that I am getting questions about by Amazon right now is our rejected loads, okay? We have a plan to fix that. We're gonna put that plan in place this weekend. But other than that, you guys have been doing a fantastic job. I appreciate you guys working in the new normal, cleaning your trucks, checking in, checking out, wearing your uniforms, your blue vests. We've got a lot of things coming, okay? We've got swag coming. We've got more morale boosting events. We understand this is a different environment than it is in Last Mile. We don't have the ability to get everybody together all the time, but we wanna make sure that we're still providing all that same goodness to you guys that we are to our Last Mile team. All right, guys? To everyone watching, really appreciate all your work, and we'll see you guys at the next one.
I'll say for those of you who have stuck it out watching at home, this is kind of, as we improve Middle Mile from its already good performance, it's gonna take multiple tries, like multiple iterations, okay? I don't even know how many iterations of organization we went through in Last Mile before its current state, which is very smooth. So we're making these changes. We might figure out that in a few months, like, oh, we got to change something again. All right, we're not changing just for the sake of change. We're changing with the intent of improvement. So it may seem like there's lots of rules and processes and procedures that are going on here, but again, guys, it's all just to make things fair, consistent, reliable, and I know there's a number of maybe it's everyone in Middle Mile just kind of wants to be able to get in the truck and be left alone, and that's what we want too. Okay, we want people to have the freedom to know what the boundaries of your job are, and just be able to come in and do that. That really lowers the stress level. It makes you enjoy your work a lot more. You can listen to whatever music you want. You don't have to worry about getting calls or anything like that. That's what we want. We want people to enjoy their job and it to be consistent and reliable. So that's what we're working on. That being said, if anybody has any feedback at any point, please push that feedback up to us. It's always stuff that we're gonna take into consideration, think about, see if we can implement, and really continue to make these efforts. So thank you for all watching along at home. Thank you guys for being here, and we'll look to do some of these meetings as needed in the future. Thanks.